Hi, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker today. It's not every day you get to meet some of your heroes. I've gotten to take some of his courses through my medical field that I've been in, and it's not a topic we talk about all the time. You don't bring it up at the dinner table. It's not like a holiday conversation, but human trafficking is a huge epidemic right now, and it's not just the Epstein things you see on the news or it happens in other countries. It happens here in our backyard. It happens at our airports. It happens around these neighborhood streets right here in downtown Orlando. So Tomas, Lares, he just is amazing and what he's been doing to change and make awareness and safety areas for people. He's been advocating for anti-human trafficking initiatives since 2004. He has over 34 years of experience in local, state, and national levels, managing and starting nonprofits and the public advocacy initiatives. He has 4 pages of accolades. I had to cherry pick some because his message is so important. In 2005, he was instrumental in facilitating one of the first human trafficking seminars in Central Florida, where various stakeholders attended, and as a result, he co-founded the Space Coast Rescue and Restore Coalition, which is now known as the Space Coast Human Trafficking Task Force. In 2007, in partnership with the NBI, began going on sting operations and was the victim advocate to respond to calls from agents and provided victim services to NBI, who represented Orange County Sheriff's Office, Orlando Police Department, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Federal Bureau of Investigations. He's also worked closely with the Florida 9th Judicial Circuit State's Attorney's Office. One of the outcomes of these partnerships was that a model with evidence-based practices was created for the role of being a trauma-informed, victim-centered victim advocate. In 2009, he initiated a newly formed nonprofit called Florida Abolitionist Inc., now United Abolitionist Inc., and is an anti-human trafficking organization that networks, facilitates, and creates preventative and restorative solutions to stop human trafficking. In 2019, he was instrumental in advocating for HB 851, in which it requires specific continuing education for hotel and lodging industries, which in Orlando is huge. And it requires the Department of Law Enforcement to establish continued employment training components relating to human trafficking. The Florida Abolitionist is now subcontracted by Pasco First to create training, and which is now hosted by the Florida Alliance to End Human Trafficking in Tallahassee, Florida. In 2023, he was chosen as the advisor for the University of South Florida TIP Lab and BRIGHT project under SB 7064, which authorizes the creation of statewide repositories for human trafficking data and mandates that state agencies share human trafficking incidences and data with the lab. In 2024, he was appointed the first Rotary District 6980 Stop Human Trafficking Chair in the state of Florida. And it is my pleasure to introduce you all to Tomas, Lares.
Thank you, Ruby, for the introduction. And it's always good to be in this legendary club. And so I wish I had received the 100-year booklet of your history, but thank you for having me. And thank you for, I don't know, is it okay to say Happy New Year still? Or is there a certain date that you, okay. So Happy New Year. And I know today's subject is always a little heavy and there's a lot of content. So I'm going to go through it quickly to give you some action steps and things that we're doing on the ground here in Orlando. So there's me. January is National Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And that had began just as President Bush was leaving office, but then President Obama made the whole month an awareness month. It used to just be one day, Saturday, which would be Saturday, January 11th. And so this whole month we observed what does the state of human trafficking look like and how we can help in starting the year. As stated, my 501c3 organization, which began December 2009, and our niche in the anti-trafficking movement is that first response. So when I began, as you heard in my bio, in 2004, specifically advocating for victims with the FBI, I became one of the first advocates here in Central Florida. In 2007, I met NBI down the road, our Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation, and became their first advocate on the issue. And so I've been working with these agencies closely. And when I started the nonprofit, that was what was needed, was to have that first response. How do you, when you get a call at 3 in the morning, right, on a Saturday, or at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, where do you put these victims? There was no safe houses. Back then, Carol Wick, from former CEO of Harbor House, was generous in 2007. She said, Tomas, I'm going to assign beds for these victims of human trafficking. And so that was the first place that I was able to access for housing for these victims that are identified here in our community. I think I just went through the mission as stated. We work closely with Homeland Security now and still with the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation. In fact, yesterday we had received a call on our hotline from the Florida Department of Health, who monitors all the massage parlors. And specifically, just down the street, there are some nefarious things happening here. And one of the victims that came forward was from China and bought for $40,000 and brought here to the United States and was started in California. A lot of times they start in California or New York and then are filtered all over the country. And so in the last, we have a diversion program with our circuit here in Circuit 9. We've had 20 Mandarin speaking victims in the last year come forward, which has never happened in all these years that I've been advocating, almost 21. And fear retaliation to their family back in China, for example, their culture you don't want to dishonor, maybe as a family member who owns the business that they came or got sponsored for here. But in the last year, 20 have come forward, and yesterday was 21. So something's working. So work closely with both of these agencies, as you can see their mission and vision. Both of them have been proactive, right, to disrupt these criminal organizations. And one of the neat things that have happened is that they've become victim-centered, which means, you know, law enforcement for so many years has had an image of not being victim-centered. But when it comes to this issue and working with our victims, both of these agencies have that victim-centered approach. And that's why when we started all those years ago, we started having victim advocates go on these stings. Again, they would call 3 a.m. We think there's something here on OBT, Tomas, or maybe at one of the hotels. And we would take a victim advocate there and interview the person that was being trafficked. It's been very effective. So you see there the prevention, protect, prosecute, and partner for these counter trafficking strategies. And we love these partnerships. So in the human trafficking umbrella, and I know many of you have already heard the human trafficking 101, so I'm not going to go into it a lot today, but there's labor and sex trafficking. We've seen more and more calls for labor trafficking, which you don't hear a lot about. And I'm going to explain a little bit what that looks like. And of course, sex trafficking, the use of force, fraud, and coercion. But if you're under 18, if you're right, 17 and under, you don't need to have those elements to prove the crime of trafficking. There's no such thing as a child prostitute or a child sex worker. Somebody coerce them into, for example, now what's happening, a lot of them are getting friends on Instagram and all these social networks, thinking it may be a boyfriend. She may only be 10 years old and ends up being trafficked by somebody. It could even be sending inappropriate videos or pictures, and then what's called sextortion, which is huge right now, is they're being blackmailed. If they don't send more, they're going to tell their parents, or they know what school they go to. And so we're seeing more and more of those cases. That's actually the number 1 report right now. It's called sextortion. So there's a difference between sex work and sex trafficking. And a lot of times there's confusion about those things. One is consensual adults, right, choosing to do these acts. The other is that force, fraud, and coercion again, unless you're a child. Here's the triangle of labor trafficking. We see a lot of violations happening, right, in the workforce over the years. Abuse, exploitation. Maybe somebody wasn't paid what they were told. Maybe they're being paid under minimum wage. All those things are just labor violations. It becomes labor trafficking when they're, again, that force, fraud, or coercion, in which we've seen where people are brought here on false premises, thinking they're going to get the American dream, end up getting a nightmare. And that's what's happening too with these massage parlors down the road, is that they are working long hours, not sometimes even being paid. So that would be considered labor trafficking. That's the difference. And they're threatened. Again, there's a difference between trafficking and smuggling. I know there's a lot of talk about the southern border, and what does that look like with human trafficking. And so smuggling is just a quick definition, is a violation against our borders, right? Where people are being brought over undocumented, illegally. Where trafficking doesn't have to be crossing a border. Again, many kids are being trafficked from their own bedroom by these bad actors. In fact, I think I mentioned a case, a big case that's going to the Supreme Court here from Central Florida, with the Haba law firm. The attorney Lisa Haba in Seminole County is suing what's called Twitter X, back then before Elon Musk took over. But they had permitted two 14-year-old boys a porn video to be shown on Twitter. And even when the parents said, this is our children, please take it down, they said, you have to prove it, that they're your children. You have to prove their age. They had to send documents. In the meantime, they left it on there for 9 days. These boys were fooled by somebody on Snapchat, which is a certain app, thinking it was a 14-year-old girl, and it was not. It was traffickers using the platform. And long story short, they ended up 9 days showing that video, and almost 200,000 people viewed it, including the entire school. Somebody had airdropped it so all the students could see this video, humiliating. And went to the courts. They said, yes, Twitter or X, you're the trafficker. You benefited. Every click, you made money. Then it went to the Ninth Circuit. They said, no, you're not responsible what other people do on your platforms. And now it's being appealed to the Supreme Court. So please look out for that case. Again, the Haba law firm with the National Center on Sex Exploitation to protect these kids from being exploited. So that's what's happening, the trafficking trend that we're seeing as well. There's that forced fraud and coercion. Trafficking victims can be of any age, ethnicity, sex, gender identity, nationality, immigration status, cultural, socioeconomic class, education. It doesn't matter. Trafficking does not discriminate. Found in legitimate and illegitimate industries. So we're seeing it across the board. Many of them are connected to drug trafficking, human smuggling, right? So they may think they're just being brought over the border, and then they don't let them go once they're here. That's when it turns into trafficking, money laundering. It could be relatives. There's the familial trafficking now is on the rise, where actually somebody they knew is the one who trafficked them. And it's sad to say that there's a lot of parents addicted to drugs who have sold their children in our community. The United States is a source, transient, and destination country. So we're seeing all the above on the trafficking, both sex and labor trafficking. Here's some stats. According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, Florida is the third state still with the amount of calls that are coming into that hotline in Washington, D.C. According to the Labor Organization, there's almost 50 million victims of human trafficking worldwide. A lot of that has been exacerbated by the Ukrainian war and Russian war, by some of these genocides that are occurring, and many refugees become vulnerable and victimized. They also look at the stat. It went up from 150 billion last year to $236 billion as being the revenue of this crime. That's competing right with the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Apple. And the NASDAQ last year actually states that they believe it's higher, 346 billion, 0.7 billion in illicit financial flows that they're seeing. That's why, right? There's a scripture that says that the love of money is what? That's what's really fueling this, friends. The National Center on Sexual Exploitation, missing and exploited children, rather. Look at this, their last report that came out, their fiscal year, October, that increase, 456,000 reports, 300% rise from 2021 to 2023. That sextortion that I mentioned, right, where kids are being blackmailed, they're connecting with these different bad actors on social media devices. So there's a huge increase. The digital gateways, social media, apps, websites, gaming. We're seeing a lot of boys being recruited on gaming, and AI technology creating lifelike faces and voices. That's a bit scary, right? That's the bad side of AI that we're going to see these criminals use. So how can we get involved, right? I've told you the bad news. I've told you the problem. Um, we believe in the power of collaboration, right? So we all know the proverb, it takes a village, and that's what we're doing. And that's why I'm so honored to be the first Stop Human Trafficking Chair for our Rotary. And I have some exciting news to share with you today, and showing you how we're going to collaborate this year as Rotarians. By the way, I'm a member of the Lake Nona Rotary Club. Um, So our programs for United Abolitionists is we have that customized training. We have a learning management system now, and we customize the trainings for your industry. As Ruby stated in my bio, I had the honor of advocating for the law in Florida for the mandatory training for all these industries in the hospitality and tourism, specifically the hotel and lodging, to be trained annually. And we're one of the approved trainings in the state. If you have that business, you can get certified through us. Victim services and advocacy, we run a hotline, a specialized hotline. And so we get those calls. Outreach, we do a lot of outreach with law enforcement, federal, state, and local, to find either missing kids or victims, adult victims of trafficking. Accomplishments, again, we've created that 24-hour hotline, instrumental in the House Bill 851, making it mandatory training in Florida. And then also I was appointed by our Attorney General, Ashley Moody, to create the housing standards for safe houses in our state. We're the first state to have certification, believe it or not, for those standards. Vision 2025 is have been endorsed by Homeland Security, and the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority has given us a soft room at the Orlando International Airport. It's the first airport actually in the world that will have a room for victims to come to when they're identified by any of the airlines, ride shares, trains, buses. And over the holidays, we were busy. Usually they would just go to the Orlando Police Department's station. And if they're foreign born, they would go with Homeland Security. And we have found that many of the victims will not cooperate when they think they're in trouble or think they're going to jail. And so we've created that victim-centered, where we interview them, find out what really happened, see if they want to go to a safe house, want to go back to family. And so we will have that first soft room in the world here. We also have created the Hospitality, Tourism, and Transportation Coalition. And so we have the airlines, again, the ride shares, the buses, the trains, the hotels on that new coalition. And lastly, as you know, when I stated with our district has the first Stop Human Trafficking Chair, we were able to partner with the other districts, which that's one of our announcements. We went to the Zone Summit. We were one of the 3 picked for the Shark Tank this year. Our district governor, Sonia Hightower Labasco, brought all governors in Florida together. We wrote a grant, and we ended up winning the Shark Tank, almost $400,000. We have to raise 20%, and then they'll match the 80. But these are some of the things we're going to do in Florida. We're going to do a major awareness campaign. We're going to partner with the 27 task forces on human trafficking in Florida for backpack tribes. So whether you live in Pensacola or Key West, and you're a Rotarian, we're going to be providing those items that they need for their stings, the backpacks, maybe gift cards, other services. So this is something that is historic for our state to come together for this initiative. So I know that you'll probably be getting emails. The committee, I believe, is meeting tomorrow with the grant, and I'm working with International Rotary as well, what that's going to look like. One of the things I'm excited about is something new we're going to be starting is the Multicultural Coalition on Trafficking. And so I'm glad that my Brazilian friends are here. We've been working with the Brazilian community here in Orlando. And as they identify victims, we've given a protocol with the Mexican consulate, with all the different multicultural groups, so they know how to report effectively. And so part of this coalition that we're starting is also going to be part of the impact already that this grant is going to have on our community. There's the blue campaign. That's the color for awareness, especially during this awareness month. And there's our Florida hotline, FLL Safe. And that's if you see the crime of human trafficking. And this is our local hotline, the 888-888-HOPE-1. If you suspect something or you have a question. We are having our 17th annual Human Trafficking Awareness Conference this month on January 22nd at Rosen College of Hospitality. So it's free, and we're going to be talking about AI and human trafficking and how to prevent that and keep our kids safe. We also have our 15th annual Polaris Star Awards, and we have people coming from all over the country. That'll be on January 24th at Rosen College. We are giving an award to the Sound of Freedom movie that came out, and their producer will be coming to receive the award. There's my contact information and our volunteer coordinator, Brenda. If you want to get a hold of us, all those events are on the website. And we also have next Friday, the 17th, at the YMCA in Dr. Phillips for Rotarians to come and bring your friends, maybe that you're interested in Rotary. We'll be doing a presentation, a longer presentation on all the efforts that the Rotary is doing in Florida and how you can get involved. We're creating different subcommittees, including, do you know that when victims are recovered and have to go to a safe house, for trafficking, there's no place to put their pets. Harbor House is one of the first domestic violence shelters that started a pet kennel, and we want to start one with one of the safe houses here in Central Florida. A lot of victims don't get help because they don't want to leave the only living thing that has given them unconditional love. And so they end up staying in the horrible circumstance or in their trauma. And we want to change that. So we're also starting a subcommittee for pet rescue. So a lot's happening with Rotary. My favorite quote before we do Q&A is, "You may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again, you did not know William Wilberforce." So thank you again for your time. And I think we have some time for Q&A.
Here we go.
Thank you. Are you using AI to help catch people? Companies like Cellulite?
Yeah, so the University of Central Florida, one of our partners, has an incredible AI program, David Metcalf. He'll be there at the conference on January 22nd, and we're talking about how we're going to disrupt and track, especially all the trafficking. They can scrape the World Wide Web and the dark net, and yes, so they're building those tools to help law enforcement identify these bad actors. Not always. A lot of times they're just fearful and want to get out, so they don't want to rat on anyone, fear of retaliation of their family or other, even the victims that are still there. So that's where the AI can help tracking, right? Where are they being trafficked from where? some of the things that are being used already is actually the group that runs Motel 6. Think about Motel 6, right? We know a lot of trafficking happens a lot of times at those places where you don't have to go into a lobby, right? You can just park in the back of the motel. Well, they're using AI now as well, and they'll get a report. For example, a lot of these victims will get posted on the internet. Well, they'll track where they did that post, and a lot, if it's in one of their hotels, then they know exactly where it came from. So it's going to be it's a game changer for sure. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This might be very small scale, but I'm curious if you've seen the videos on social media of people kind of doing vigilante work of like luring child like minors and confronting them like in person. I'm just curious, like, what are your opinions on this type of work and activity?
Kind of like the vigilantes or like the Lone Ranger type of recoveries or rescues. We're very leery of that. You know, we have to follow law and order here, so that's why we work with the federal, state, and local law enforcement. When we do outreach, we always work in hand with them. Even though there may be some of these groups, there's a lot of groups rising up right now that are ex-military that want to, you know, are angry at the issue and want to help, but we're very careful with not doing anything without law enforcement being the lead here in the United States. I know there are other countries, they do other stuff, but yeah. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I know you're based here in Florida, but are you getting support and managing services all over the United States and around?
So yeah, we're based here. We do most of our direct services here, but because I've been doing it for so many years, I know a lot of the, in fact, I'm on the new National Coalition on Trafficking, which includes many of the huge stakeholders here in the country. So we just network and we know who to call. But for my organization, we're based mainly here. Yes, sir.
Thomas, last question, if I may. This effort has got to be expensive. How are you funded? Who are your partners?
Great question. So we're privately funded. We have churches, a lot of churches fund us, monthly donors, you know, people that give $5 to $25 a month, some foundations as well. And our board just decided for us to start going after governmental grants, you know, that are earmarked, for example, for the hotline or victim services. But so yes, it's been mostly privately funded all these years.
Thanks for the great work you're doing. Thanks for being here. Oh, wait a minute. Whoop. One more.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I think that the numbers you shared are very impactful, especially them being in our local community. I work for the airlines as an instructor for flight attendants. And do you guys have the capability or the numbers or the capacity to actually go to independent airline, or not independent, but individual airlines and offer training to those flight attendants and pilots and people that would experience this firsthand because we teach it, but when you hear 20 people right here just down the street, it really puts a different perspective on it.
So that's why what we're doing at the Orlando International Airport, the new soft room and the new coalition is unique. We're actually been meeting with the different airlines. We're going to do scenario based, customized training, because I know y'all have your corporate training in that. And what I'm hearing is they're saying that's not enough. So we're going to do customized training for the airlines. For example, one of the airlines is going to let us film on the plane, you know. So there's going to be some really cool stuff coming out. So I'll give you my card. Let's stay in contact. Yeah.
We lied. We have one more.
Sorry, just
Yes.
one more. I know we normally discourage this, but I just have to ask, how can I donate?
So if you go to there's the Rotary grant, right, that we're trying to get the match, the 20%, so we can get the 80 for the Shark Tank grant. That's one way. And our district governor, tomorrow they're deciding on the link that they're going to use for that. For United Abolitionists, it's stophumantrafficking.com. And you can also donate there, and you can see all the things we're doing and where your funds will go. You can earmark it as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Your efforts are making a significant difference here in Central Florida and around the world. We appreciate it. And to show you a portion of our appreciation, I have this. It's it's one of 1.4 million, only 1.4 million of these in the world. It is a mug for you.
Thank you.
But again, let's give it up for him. Thank you. Great. Important topic.